Can I call the meeting to order, please? Thank you. Before we start, can I just remind everybody of a few housekeeping rules? This is being broadcast live and for future viewing. The equipment is such that it needs, the cameras, which are these two things here, need to follow the microphone. So we only have the possibility of 2 microphones on at any one time. One of them most likely will be mine, and then individual speakers around the room. So it's extremely important that when you start to speak, you switch your microphone on first, and when you finish speaking, switch your microphone off afterwards. That way, the recording is seamless. Right. First item on the agenda tonight is apologies for absence. Could we receive any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've received a number of apologies from Councillor Slater, Councillor Allen, Councillor Bailey and Councillor George. Councillor Slater has appointed Councillor Mansfield as his substitute. Councillor Allen has appointed Councillor Beach, who's attending via Zoom, as his substitute. And Councillor Bailey has appointed Councillor Shrive as his substitute. We also have Councillor Gould attending via Zoom as well.
Okay, could I welcome those substitutes to the meeting? If it's the first time they've been, it might be strange, but it might not. So welcome to all. Right, second one is declarations of interest, if any. Do any councillors have declarations of interest to declare on the items under discussion at this evening's meeting? I think the answer to that is negative. The third item, urgent business. To consider any urgent business brought forward to the committee under Rule 12. Do we have any?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4 is questions from the public. To receive questions submitted by any citizen of the Borough in accordance with Part 31E of the Constitution. Questions must have been received by the 7th of January to have been included. I don't believe there are any. Thank you. Right. Item 5. Questions. To receive any questions submitted by any member of the committee or the answer by the leader, cabinet members or officers of the council. Questions again must have been received by the 7th of January 2025. I believe there's no questions. Item number 6, the public minutes of the previous meeting held on the 18th of December 2024. Typo error. 18th of December 2025.
No, I think the date is the 18th of December 2024, just prior to the new year.
It might have been corrected in your copy. Yeah. I propose the approval of the public minutes from the previous meeting. Do I have a seconder? Kim. Okay. Councillor Smith. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour of those? I'll be careful because some people weren't in attendance and they must abstain because they weren't here to verify. I think those minutes have been accepted. There's nobody against it. Abstain. And the other one I've got is Councillor Allen, who's not here tonight, so yeah. So those minutes have been passed. We come to item 7, which is a petition. We have a report, so I'll read it out verbatim. We have received the petition as detailed on the agenda to be considered by this committee. In accordance with Part 4J, petition scheme of the Constitution, may I remind councillors that a maximum of 30 minutes is allowed for consideration of this petition. To start we have received the following note from the Head of Corporate and Environmental Services. Dear Chair, unfortunately I am not in a position to attend tonight's meeting, having not received a direct invite and having agreed to support a family member with a medical issue in the meantime. However, responses to the approved petitioners' questions have been provided by myself and colleagues will be happy to respond to any further questions should they arise during this item in the meeting. By way of background, I am able to update on the progress of the introduction of the garden waste subscription service as follows. The initial promotional campaign commenced late October last year and included a press release, the attachment of bin tags on the wheelie bins, information on the council's website, including a comprehensive FAQ, frequently asked questions section on the garden bin subscription service, as well as social media messaging. As at the 8th of January 2025, the service has attracted 14,094 subscribers at the early bird rate. The Cabinet report on the garden waste subscription service presented in May last year indicated a potential participation rate of 45% of households should a subscription rate of £40 be introduced. Given the 45% take-up rate equates to 21,600 properties, based on evidence received from other local authorities, current progress against this target is positive. The estimated income from undertaking the subscription service is £770,000, assuming the indicated take-up rate is achieved. This income estimate includes the provision of an early bird rate of £35 and concessions for those householders on specific benefits. This is the lowest charge rate in Staffordshire. It should also be noted that the approximate annual cost of the service is £1.1 million, and therefore it remains a significant pressure on the council's finances. The petition organiser, Mr. John Anderson, is present at the meeting this evening, and I invite him to address the meeting for up to 5 minutes on the subject of the petition. John, if you'd like to take a seat.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question before I do? Okay. When I addressed the council chamber, I was bombarded with a list of questions and then expected to remember them all, who asked them and answer. If there are to be questions and answers, can they be asked individually and answered individually as they come? Because it's got to be a bit of a circus, to be quite honest.
We've got the facilities for taking these down, have we? I guess so.
Rather than, I know it's a smaller meeting, I understand that as well.
Yeah, I'm taking this out of your 5 minutes, by the way, so you better hurry up.
We've got 5 minutes when I'm going to sit down, please. Yeah, that's okay. When you're ready, John. Okay, good evening, councillors and officers. So I've got quite a lot to say, really, as is quite usual. So I just think the first thing I've got to say is what on earth are you thinking of with the consultation? It was poorly advertised. There were only 2,067 responses, and I think a lot of those wouldn't have replied, but I think they felt for somehow obligated. You get so far through the petition, fine, you've got to tick a £40 box and continue. Many people have told me they wouldn't even have known about the petition, the consultation, if it wasn't for my petition. I've heard that so many times now. I have no statistics, so I'm not even going to bore you to death with that. I won't charge ESBC for this advertising, but it's something really to bear in mind, because if you're going to do a consultation, people need to know, the residents need to know, and they also need to have their opinion put forward, and they've been quite censored in this by the shortfall or shortcomings of the consultation. Also, another question, there's a lot of questions here really. One is, every time a post goes onto ESBC Facebook page or any social media, the comments are disabled, not on other subjects, but on this one. Why is that? Okay. The brown bins clearly belong to ESBC. I've brought one along here. It's got ESBC written on it, East Staffordshire Council. It's very clear. Residents are being told that they can't give the bins back should they not subscribe. So if the residents want to return them, they're your bins, have them back. If not, I will advertise to the residents to put a bill into East Staffordshire Council for their storage. People's houses aren't a council storage depot, and the nonsense that's been told to them about for the next person to own the house actually doesn't wash, really, does it? So I think people need to return the bins. So an address for the return would be nice, or a date when the residents can leave them out to be collected would also be good. I'd like to know what is the cost of a rejected load of blue bin recycling waste. When garden waste starts being found in those blue bins, it's going to be rejected. I believe the cost to be in the thousands. Maybe you can enlighten me on that. If those bins start being rejected, it leaves two problems. It leaves a mixed waste, all of which should be capable of recycling. So there will be green waste and plastics and glass, etc., mixed. I can only see that if a blue bin, a load of blue bin recycling is rejected, that it will end up being incinerated, which is not ideal. In fact, this committee is set up to scrutinise environmental issues, and I think that would be very poor. But anyway, at the end of the day, any cost to having loads turn away, it's residents' money, not your money. The money is residents, and people work very hard for their money. Okay, black or grey bin waste is incinerated, which is perfectly okay when it's the right type of waste in it. But, you know, if we're going to start having garden waste in there that can be composted, that's going for incineration, it isn't acceptable at all. I don't know how you're going to monitor this, since it will just go off to be incinerated, but that will have to be seen. Residents have said quite clearly they are going to put it in the black bin. I've seen the comments made on the petition, which I'm going to read out with whatever time I have left at the end. Black or grey bin waste sorry, I've done that bit. So bonfires are another thing. We're in the cost of living crisis. People are already burning wood to keep warm. They can't afford the utilities. We're going to go back to days of smog. People are going to be burning garden waste, which stinks. It puts a lot of smoke out. Where I live, I can already smell smoke in the air on cold nights with people burning wood. So we're going backwards. We're going back into the time where I grew up, where you went out in the street and coughed and couldn't see on a foggy night because there was smog out there. And I think we're starting to go backwards now. So to me, it's another tax on the underprivileged. Underprivileged people that may get some enjoyment out of gardening, putting their waste in a brown bin that's paid for by council tax, is probably now not going to bother. Okay. The consultation had no place for the lovely folk of East Staffs to say they wish to continue paying for the brown bin service within their council tax. This is a leading consultation. Your party promised not to do this during the election campaign. Is it even a consultation if one is forced to give answers they do not believe in?
Can you start to wind up, please, John?
Yeah. Okay. So I was invited to ask some questions to this committee. I sent a list of questions which were actually censored. I had an email saying thank you for submitting the questions below. In consultation with the Vice Chairman of the committee, the following questions have been accepted. So some of my questions were not accepted, which I think is unacceptable. It's censorship. I can't think we're up. So the questions that were accepted are for the ones I asked are a lot more. My actual questions were about the run-up to the election campaign. That question has been asked, but none of the political side of it has been asked as a question. One of the questions was how much has it cost to get to this stage in the whole brown bin charge process. That question's been refused. One of the questions was what will the revenue from the brown bin charge be used for. That question has been refused. And on the last question was about bearing in mind we are in the midst of a cost of living crisis, bearing in mind poor mental health is a growing issue and gardening is a great way to promote good mental well-being. Bearing in mind many people with poor mental health suffer from financial hardship for many reasons and gardening can be therapeutic. Bearing in mind East Staffordshire has a higher than national average suicide rate.
Can I ask you to close now?
Okay, well the question at the end of that was, bearing in mind the above, would you say charging the disadvantaged residents of East Staffordshire for the emptying of their brown bins will have a disastrous adverse effect? The last question was, do you still have a buffet after your full council meetings?
Well, that last one I don't think has any particular bearing on the subject in hand.
Well, since it's...
Can I assure you that all your questions, we have a subcommittee of this grand committee, right, and that subcommittee is still digging through all the facts and figures and data and what have you to come to a conclusion to present to the Climate Change and Environment Scrutiny Committee. All your questions will be looked at and discussed. I'll give you that assurance.
May I ask where they will be published?
I don't know whether I don't know.
Well, I mean, if they're asked, they need to be published for all to see. I mean, I've asked as a member of the public, I would like them to be published publicly.
So just to clarify on that point through the chair, if I may, the questions that you submitted prior to the meeting, the responses are being circulated as we speak. If there are any subsequent questions arising from the discussion that we're about to have in a moment, then we'll take those away certainly and get those back. So the members of the committee, yourself as the petition organiser, and they'll be published alongside the minutes, as well as any other conversation we're having publicly here this evening as well, in the normal way.
May I will go and sit down in a second, I promise. But the questions here on this sheet, the 4 questions, are not all of the questions I asked. So I feel that my questions were censored. I'm a member of the public asking my local council questions and they've been refused. I didn't ask to ask these questions. I was invited to ask these questions. When I do then ask the questions, I'm being censored, and I'm really, I feel that is really wrong.
Well, I feel that you might be put out, and I give you my assurance that all the questions that were received by this council will be looked at. How we deal with our responses will be another issue, and I don't want to prejudge that discussion, but they will be looked at.
I will go and sit down, but may I just say then, I mean, I asked, when you say they're looked at, they've already been looked at in conjunction with the Vice Chair, which I believe is you, Councillor Huckabee. So this is what I've got an email saying they've been looked at in conjunction or been...
No, they will be by the subcommittee, which has been given the work to do.
The email I had reads, in conjunction with the Vice Chairman of the committee, the following questions have been accepted, which means, in my brain, that the others have not been accepted. What else can I think?
So just again to clarify in terms of process, the petition subject matter was in relation to the consultation, so the questions that were accepted in inverted commas are the questions in relation to the consultation, which is the subject matter of the petition. I think what the chair is trying to say there is that there are other mechanisms, so there's an ongoing review into the garden waste subscription service that we're looking at as a subcommittee, as the chair has said, and I think that there's some questions can be brought into that review. I think that's what the chair is trying to say without putting words in your mouth.
Okay, thank you. I'll be putting these questions through an FOI, Freedom of Information now, because to get the answers, because when one asks a question of one's local council, one expects a reply. So I will do that. But thank you for letting me speak anyway, and I'll go and let you get on with your meeting.
Before I open this item for debate, I'd like to thank John for coming in and presenting his fears and his questions in a very salubrious state. So thank you, John. Before I open this item for debate, then I would like to read the questions and the subsequent answers received in advance of the meeting. The first one was was the consultation on the brown bin charges a leading consultation? Leading in the sense that did it lead to a particular result that was either required or found good? The response: the principle of introducing a subscription service was considered at a public meeting of the Council's Cabinet on the 20th of May 2024. At this meeting, Cabinet resolved to approve the introduction of a chargeable service, with the charging rate being subject to the outcome of a public consultation. Therefore, the consultation was devised to help shape the service rather than to consider the principle of introducing a charge. This position was identified and set out in the preamble to the consultation, and therefore the Council does not consider it to be leading, as the principle of the charging had already been approved. Question 2. Do you consider the consultation to be adequately advertised? The response: the consultation was promoted in a number of ways, including the issuing of a formal press release, a clear presence on the Council's website and via social media. These are all recognised and valuable means of communication and represent standard practice in how the Council promotes its activities. For example, a review of the Council's analytics has indicated that social media posts via Facebook had reached a number of 44,800 individuals. Question 3. Do you think the fact the consultation form could not be completed without agreeing to pay at least £40 put residents off from completing and submitting the consultation? Response: this was not captured by the consultation. As always with a public consultation, it is the decision for each resident as to whether they decide to submit a response or not. The Council always encourages residents to participate, as referenced in the response to question 2. The range of charges proposed in the consultation were derived from those being offered across the county by other local authorities. The final charge of £40 also included an early bird offer of £35 for those households that subscribed prior to the 31st of January 2025. This represents the lowest price in Staffordshire. Furthermore, one key outcome from the consultation was the introduction of a concessionary rate for those households in receipt of certain benefits. Question 4. Of the 2,067 residents that completed the brown bin consultation, 2,009 stated a preference to pay the lowest sum possible, £40. Question: do you think this is so because they could not complete the consultation without ticking at least £40? Response: the consultation did not capture the reason for each respondent selecting their preference to this question. As set out in the response to question 1, the purpose of the consultation was to help shape the collection service rather than addressing the principle of introducing a charge. Those are the 4 ones that appeared on the agenda. I will now open this item for debate. Would anybody like to speak on this item? Would any councillor like to speak on this item? as I've said previously, when the subcommittee meets, it will take these questions and probably more that you failed to answer, and it will examine the system that's been introduced. This is a scrutiny committee. It bears no allegiance to any other department in the council. We're advised by officers, helped by officers through this, but we have an independence that hopefully guides the cabinet into better decision making. That guidance will come in a report form and be sent to them for consideration. We don't have the power to impose any decisions. We only have the power to give friendly advice or criticism. That we will do. So, has anybody got anything to say? Right. I think that item is closed then, for the moment. If we move to item 8, if John and his friend would like to depart, you can do at this point in time. If not, you can stop. But I give you the option. If you do go, can you take your brown bin with you, please? Right. Item 8, Scrutiny Review Programme Update. I now invite James Abbott, the Corporate Services Manager, to provide an update.
Thanks, Chair. So the purpose of the item really is just to provide an update on where we are with the programme of review topics that the committee has previously agreed. So, as you're probably aware, at the meeting in December, the committee agreed the recommendations arising from the Community Engagement Review. So the intention is to bring that report and those recommendations to Cabinet to consider at their meeting next month, the February meeting. We have 2 other reviews that are ongoing, so that's the impact of garden waste subscriptions on climate change and also the Healthy Homes Initiative. So the 2 nominated support officers are assisting members with those 2 reviews. So we'll keep those reviews moving forward with the subgroups of members that are undertaking those pieces of work. But as always, if there are areas beyond those 2 topics that I've just mentioned that the committee want to look at, to have on our radar for scrutiny, then happy for those to be thrown into the mix and added to the programme.
Sorry, I forgot to switch it on. Thank you, James. Anybody got any questions? Any councillor got any questions? Thank you. We'll move to item 9 then. This is the EDR 269.24 Tree Management Policy Review. The only current public executive decision record 269.24 Tree Management Policy Review has been circulated with the agenda. Does anybody have any questions on any of these? Okay, I take it nobody has. Right, item 10, date of next meeting. The date of the next meeting will be the 7th of April 2025. Right, moving to item 11, Quarter 2 Performance Report 2024 to 2025, Corporate Plan. I now invite James Abbott, the Corporate Services Manager, to present this report.
Thanks again, Chair. So this is the Quarter 2 Performance Report. So we're looking at the Council's progress towards achieving its corporate priorities up to the end of September of this financial year, along with the latest updates on the leisure contract and the Town's Fund performance as well. So firstly, in terms of the corporate plan, if we look at the live targets, this equates to the council being at 86.81% green overall. It's just 6.59% amber and also just 6.59% red using the usual defined traffic lifestyle system of ratings. That small number of red and amber targets that I've mentioned there are all detailed in the tables you can see on pages 9 through to 13 of the main report. They just provide some narrative and context around the situation with each of those indicators. But of course, the full detail on everything is included in Appendix 1, which is attached. The report also goes on to provide information on the performance of the leisure operating contract, which you can see in Section 6, which looks very positive. And finally, we have the performance of the Towns Fund programme, which is detailed there in section 7 of the report. Again, that's to provide an update on the Council's own High Street Linkages project, but also shows a positive picture with the 3 partner projects that we have there as well. There is, of course, finer detail in the Leisure and Towns Fund appendix that you'll see later on in this evening's agenda. That's just a very high-level summary of the report, but I'm, of course, happy to take any questions or take any questions away.
Yeah, I've got a couple, if I may, from the Chair. GND 22 concerns the appreciation that there's been flooding of the Trent, and it's raised concerns with me about the safety of the play equipment. There is one place already in Staffordshire where Checkley, actually, in the Jubilee play area, where they've shut it because there was concerns about contamination of the equipment that vulnerable, very young people obviously play with, and they might contact some of the pollution, cause illness and whatever. I have not submitted a question to the officers on this, but I've submitted a request that the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee consider this aspect, as I think it falls under their definitions. And on another one, I'd just like to make a comment about COM 13, which is the recycling performance. That obviously, 44.75% contains garden waste recycling results. And obviously, the adoption of the new system might or might not reduce that. So for future references, that would appear as a red if nothing is done, but obviously with the decision made to do it this way, then that needs readjusting or recalibrating to give a better understanding of what our recycling progress is. And those 2 points, I'm happy.
Okay, yeah, just to say then, yeah, happy to contact the relevant managers and get a response on both of those and provide an update to the committee. Yeah.
Right, now we move to an item we need to consider in private, so I will now move that in accordance with section 100(a)(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting, as it is likely, in the view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that there would be disclosed exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, indicated in brackets before each item on the agenda. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. So, we will now go to the vote. All those, no. Do I have to excuse these?
Should to take a vote on that proposal?
Okay. Oh, yeah, right. We will now go to the vote. All those for any or against, or any abstentions, please raise your hands for. Please raise your hands against. Please raise your hands for abstentions. Carried. I will wait for members of the public to leave and for the recordings to be switched off. Thank you, Daniel.